Hey guys, it's Dawn coming at you again from my kitchen table here in Texas. It has been a very long time since I've posted a video, but Father has made it abundantly clear yesterday, and I needed to do one today and let everybody know what's going on. I can tell by my email inbox that I needed to that I needed to come share with you guys where I've been, what's going on. I think the last video I did was in May, June, I'm not sure, because of my dad and all of his cardiac issues. And we had a nurse come into the house, and that was just a complete godsend. I was so grateful to Yah that he had opened that door. Well, things took a turn. The beginning of July, my dad was shuffling through the backyard and he fell. And he fractured his hip in 2 places. I go back into town. We have the surgery. We spend another week in the hospital because the surgery affected his congestive heart failure. We took a week to try to let his lungs rebound from being asleep from the anesthesia, and his heart and everything from the surgery. The congestive heart failure just caused massive fluid buildup in his lungs. So it took a week to get that going underway. After that week in the hospital, we had to go to a skilled nursing facility. Oh, we were there for 8 weeks while my dad went through rehab. His rehab had to go slowly because of his congestive heart failure. While he was in rehab at skilled nursing, his left knee blew out, and that was his left hip that he fractured in the beginning of July. So while he is going through rehab, his left knee blows out. So that slows rehab down even further. And then he has a stroke to where the back part of his brain, the very back bottom, is not getting blood. Affects his vision, his behavior, his moods. Just things at the back. Basically, it was his vision that was the most affected. Hindsight is always 20/20, as they say. My dad, when he was in skilled nursing, said he started to see his relatives that had passed come visit him at night, and friends that had passed come visit him at night. I had walked into his room and he said, "Hey, George, who was in Toastmasters with me, he came to visit me last night, and he brought his grandchildren." And I knew that George died over 20 years ago. And I'm just trying to talk to Dad and thinking, okay, is this pain medication or is this the end of life thing that his body's shutting down? So 8 weeks passes, and it comes time to leave the skilled nursing, and we have our family meeting with all the heads, the department heads there at the skilled nursing facility. It was, the skilled nursing facility there. And everybody said, you need to go to an assisted living. He has to go to an assisted living. Everything he's been through, he's not going to be able to live at home by himself. There's just no way. And my brother and I decided that we needed to put him in a skilled nursing, but our dad begged us, do not put me there. He said, I will be dead in 3 months. And we told him, we said, Dad, if you don't go to an assisted living, you'll be dead in 3 months. But if you go home, you could die sooner. Is that a risk you're willing to take? And he said, I want to die a free man in my own home. I'm willing to take that risk. And we said, okay, we'll give you 2 weeks to see how you do at home with care. So, Father opened the door. The timing was just, the timing of just people walking in the room. I mean, it was shocking, but it was the perfection to the minute of things happening, of people walking in with exactly what you needed at the exact time. It was mind-boggling. So as my dad and I are talking about this in his room at skilled nursing, in walks a representative from a senior care organization. She starts talking to me. We hit it off great. She's a former naval lieutenant. I mean, she was like high up there in the Navy. So she, excuse me, no pun intended, but she runs a tight ship, and she didn't put up with much with her employees. So I knew that they vetted their employees in depth, to the point where I had a piece about trusting them with who they would send to my dad's house. So anyway, Dad was sent home. What we wanted was 24/7 care. My dad changed his mind, and he said, I don't want care at night. I just want it during the day. So we had a caregiver there from 8 to 4 every day. Cooking, cleaning, bathing Dad, giving his medications, all this stuff. And we said, we'd give this 2 weeks to see how you do. The exact 2 weeks, that next Friday, my dad was discharged on a Friday. I took him to his orthopedist to have an x-ray of his hip. Everything looked great. Everything was healing fine. His knee was still bothering him, so we were going to have to go have a procedure for his knee. And then we were still going to have to address the stroke symptoms, that, you know, what happened after the stroke. 2 weeks to the day we bring him home, we get a call. I get a call from the caregiver, Precious Nicole. She was just awesome. She saw my dad as her granddaddy, and she would just cry when she would see these bruises on him, and she'd help bathe him, and she'd take pictures and send the pictures of the bruises to me. And she's like, Miss Dawn, this wasn't here yesterday when I bathed him. This wasn't here when I did his hair yesterday. Or, you know, these bruises weren't on his forearms. And we couldn't figure out what was happening. Well, come to find out, the 2 weeks that Dad was home, he apparently had sundowners, because we didn't realize that the stroke in the back of his head actually caused Alzheimer's. It caused a form of dementia that was going fast. So my dad was pacing at night, in the dark, at night, at his house, by himself with his walker, and I get a picture from the caregiver that Friday morning, sorry, I'm shaking you guys again, 2 weeks to the day, of a gash the size of, I guess, an extra large pizza, a gash in the wall that he fell. And I'm thinking, what in the world is going on? So we told Dad, okay, that's it. You've had 2 weeks. We're going to get in a night person, and we're going to put up cameras. That was a Friday, before everything could be solidified. That Tuesday, I get a call from his caregiver, who was so selfless. She would stay longer just to make sure Daddy was okay. I get a call from her on a Tuesday. She's saying, you need to come back. You've got to come back. He can't put his left foot on the ground. I drive back in. I get him to the ER, and my dad is hollering guttural sounds that I have never heard come out of a human. get him to the ER. We get him down on the x-ray table, and I have never heard anybody cry out to God with such power, guttural gurgles. So they start loading. So they did the x-rays of my dad, and we found out that apparently one of the times when he fell, the part of the hip, his left hip that was fractured, he actually shattered it. The doctor comes in and she goes, his hip is just shattered. It's just shattered. She goes, there's shards and splinters floating around everywhere. And what he's feeling is those shards and splinters pushing on nerves. And they're so close to the artery in his groin. And what he's feeling are those shards and splinters of a shattered left pelvis and top femur. They call that the neck, I think. They called it the neck, the top of the femur, where it fits like the ball and socket thingy, Bobby. And it just shattered. The top of the femur and the hip, it just shattered. And she said, this is how bad it was. They did not have a bed open in the ER, so they put him in a wheelchair, and they're not supposed to give narcotics in the ER in the lobby, but Dad was in such excruciating pain, and they saw why. They started loading him up on high-powered narcotics there in that wheelchair, and they took him up to the triage door, and so the doctor told me this. We did not tell Dad. I said, let me tell him. Let me call my brother first, and then we'll tell my dad. And we had some neighbors there that were helping me because my dad was 6'2", 250 pounds. He's a big guy. So I said, just let me talk to my dad. Well, I had asked my dad earlier in the 2 weeks that he was at the house with home help. I said, if this ever happened again, what would you want to do? I mean, what would you do? Because you don't want to go to an assisted living. You don't want to go there. So if this happened again, what would you want to do? And he said, I wouldn't survive if this happened again. He said, going through rehab, the surgery, he goes, I wouldn't survive. And he goes, and I'll cross that bridge when I get to it, and hopefully I won't have to cross that bridge. And I said, fair enough. So when they gave Dad the medication, I knelt down by his wheelchair, and I said, Daddy, we're at the bridge. We have to decide how we want to cross that bridge. And I said, your hip is shattered. They need to do a surgery to clean it up and give you a total hip replacement this time. They need to get the bar and the screws out, fish out the splinters and the shards, and then put in a hip replacement. They don't know, because of your congestive heart failure and the stroke you've already had, you could very well die during the surgery. You could stroke out. You could have a bigger stroke, or your heart could give out. And they said, even if you do make it through the surgery, our biggest hurdle then would be recovery. Because after the short surgery, comparatively speaking, that we went through earlier with the bar and the screws, this is going to be even more difficult because you're going to have to be under longer. And we may be in the hospital a couple of weeks, but I don't know. And I said, so I need to know from you, what do you want to do? Do you want to have the surgery and fight? Do you want to fight? Do you want the surgery and then go back to rehab and come home with home health? Or do you want the surgery, go to rehab, and then go to assisted living? And he said, I'm done. He said, sweetheart, I'm done. He said, I can't live the life I want. I can't bowl like this. The stroke has made me incapable of playing bridge successfully like I want. And his words were, I want to die a free man in my own home. And I said, okay. So I told the doctors, we got him to a room. They gave us 24 hours, and man, were they loading him up on narcotics. I mean, some serious narcotics. I mean, if you know anything about pain meds, they were actually giving him Dilaudid. And I was told that some hospitals don't carry that because it's so strong that there's a risk of theft because it is such a strong narcotic. So they were actually giving him Dilaudid and Norco on top of that. So they put him in the hospital, had several doctors come by and talk to him to make sure this is what he wanted to do. Because of the stroke and the Alzheimer's, we just wanted to make sure he knew what he was doing. And the doctors then told us, my brother and I, we had power of attorney. We had medical. My brother had medical, and I have medical. My brother had financial power of attorney. And the doctor said, this is where this comes in. And I said, well, I have a piece and I have witnesses that said that he wants to die a free man in his own home, and this is what he wants. So I get him home, set up with everything, and we start hospice for 2 weeks. The pain is so great for him that they put him on a bone cancer pain protocol. But then also because of the Alzheimer's and the sundowners, with him going completely crazy at night, we had to have psych meds. So we had everything from Haldol, methadone, Dilaudid, Norco, Trazodone, some other, this was we had to, when they delivered the medication to the door, we had to give them our driver's license. And then when the nurses would come, we had to write down everything that we dispensed to Dad, and it had to be compared to the prescription. Oh my gosh, you talk about scrutiny, and I understand why. But my dad's pain was so great, we were on high psych meds and a bone cancer pain protocol. But then also, as I've learned, as the body's dying, that the lactic acid builds up in your muscles. And it's 4 times as worse as if you just worked out. It's just excruciating. So these screams that my dad would do for 2 weeks affected me in a way that I never thought possible. So as my dad struggled with his creator, struggled letting go, fighting, he would say one thing, that he wanted to go, but he was scared to go. And the night nurses, the critical care nurses that were there with us during the night, first she said, welcome to psych med, because that's what it was and what we were seeing and what we were hearing. Father actually gave me a vision, and it was what I don't think I can talk about it right now. But basically what I saw, you fear death when you have no fear of the one true Elohim. And that's the truth. You fear death when you have no fear of the one true Elohim. So my dad passed away on a Thursday morning at 7:15 in the morning. We had the viewing. just a ton of people showed up, and I was so grateful. I mean, people his age, he's usually outlived most of his friends, and I was so grateful to see over 40 people show up in a 3-hour period, and they were all in their 80s, 70s, and 80s, and it was just precious. It was so wonderful to see. And the next morning we had the service, and my dad served 2 tours in the Army during the Korean War, and he was an MP. He was a military police in the Korean War. And there were probably 10 to 15 representatives there from the armed forces. And it was an absolute stunning honor. There were even those, because of Dad being an MP, there were actually those there that were representing the Army that were actually MPs themselves. And that was really cool to see. To see, like my dad said, be sure my brothers remember me. So I was presented the flag, the memorial flag, on behalf of the President of the United States in Dad's service. Dad was buried with the military honors, the rifle salutes, the shots. It was a glorious, glorious honoring of my dad and his service and his life. Is there such thing as a perfect father? No. And if you think there is, then you're in denial. But there is a perfect God who thinks that the people he places with each other are perfect for each other for a reason you may never know. But he places people with a purpose. The one true Elohim thought we were perfect together. And that's perfectly fine with me. But this has left me, this whole 8-month journey has left my muscular dystrophy in flare-up, my myasthenia gravis in flare-up. My doctors are trying to work feverishly with Cigna Healthcare and the infusion company to try to start my infusions back. And after going in for a visit, they said, you have classic PTSD. And she said, I'm going to give you a month to get some help. Otherwise, I'm putting you on antidepressants. And I said, I don't want to be put on antidepressants. I better get before the throne and start weeping and crying and thanking the Father. So I've got a month to work things out because I can't get the screams, the guttural screams that sounds you never think could come out of a human. You would just, you wouldn't think those sounds could come out of a human, not even an animal. I mean, the sounds. And what my husband said was, I think you heard weeping and gnashing of teeth. I said, I think you're right. So I've got a lot of work to do this month. I do. I have been talking to some friends who kind of, have been through some things, been in the Word, not as much as I should, but it's time to up the knee time. So everybody that has sent emails, I'm sorry, I have to confess to you, I have not been praying. I have not been praying, and I am so sorry. I have been in the trenches learning and watching how a body declines, the end of life stages, how one does the screams. I don't know. I don't know. If you've experienced this, please let me know. I'll leave the comments open on this video. But no trolls. I don't want to hear it. This is not the time or the place for it. If you've experienced that before and you've dealt with it before, I would love to glean anything you have to offer on how you handle this. And people ask me, well, how are you? How you doing? And I just say, I don't know. I don't know. And this is something else that really struck me. I'm not going to tell you my dad's name, nor will I put up his memorial video until after, probably to the middle of November. Because we were told to be careful if you put out an obit because identity theft has skyrocketed for people trolling the obits. Can you believe that? So we didn't put an obit in the paper, and we just spread the news through friends about Dad's passing. Once everything is probated and everything is closed, we have, praise Father, he has brought a buyer for my dad's house. I still have to go back and clean it out. I do not have the energy for that, but I'm going to give myself a couple of weeks, or a week now, before I have to go back next week. So once everything is solidified with my dad, then we will post a huge obit in the local paper, and then I will put up his video for you guys to see, because I would love to share my daddy and his journey, his life's journey with you guys, with my YouTube family. So Father has spoken to me some things I need to share, and I will have to do separate videos on those. And it's about terrorism, so I need to share those with you, and hopefully in the next couple of days I'll be able to do that. But right now I'm trying to close all of his accounts, and my brother and I have split the duties, and right now I just want to curl up with my doggies and my husband and eat a bowl of Bluebell. That's what I want, and cry, and just cry and cry and cry and get it out. But I miss my dad. And it's been a long journey, but I'm grateful he's not suffering anymore. And I'm grateful that he got to go the way he wanted to go, on land that we've owned since 1969, looking out the windows to the land that he took care of for 52 years, for 50 years, 50 years. So my dad is gone. This particular season is over. I will share the lessons that Father showed me at a later date. But I just wanted to update you guys. Father really put on my spirit that I needed to connect with you guys and let you know what's going on. I'm sorry this has been a long one, but I don't think you can rush something like this. I miss talking to you guys. I love you guys tremendously. And if you have any pearls of wisdom to share, I'll drink them up. And so now we grieve, and now we mourn. Now we deal with the screams of one who did not fear Father. So anyway, I love you guys, and I will be talking to you soon. Shalom. Bye-bye.